Sorry about that, folks. The video just stopped. All right. Um, I had to make more space. So, essentially, is my ability to do this work for myself. I don't want to say myself because I got some help by reading, going online, but it's not for everyone. To be able to do that work on your own, it takes a lot of energy. And part of what I had to do is actually took, I mean, I made a conscious decision that I'm going to go through this myself because I truly believe that there's power in your ability to earn your truth without having another opinion. Not that it's not important, but I think your ability to judge yourself, maybe the word judge is not the right word, but to see yourself through your own lenses, okay, is essential. So that's what I wanted to do, because people are always going to see you through their own lens, right? But it was important for me to go through that work. It took, when I say half of my life, I started examining this issue since I was in college. And this program, the Lead and Earn program, actually made it out in 2019. When I put it out, really haven't been circulating it. But yeah, so how do I help you lead and earn? First of all, your ability to lead is very important. And that lead starts with taking a step back, right? Watch, like, really look at yourself, not just the environment. Look at yourself. Look at the experiences that you've had from as long as you can remember. Once you can actually think about these things without getting angry, again, I at one point I snapped. I think I was having a conversation with one of my brothers, and I remember I said, why should I have to be the one to always be the front for XYZ? And I realized there was like, I really, I had to check myself. I was like, where does that come from? So at some point, whatever you're doing, you think that's your role, you're going to reject it at some point. That's when you know it's not who you are, right? So that's the first thing from personal experience. And I'm not, by no means, I have a public health degree, and I've gone through the projects that I've done in communities with children and parents to be able to understand some things. But I want to also make it very clear here, I'm no expert. I have no PhD in any of this. My own personal experience from a public health study perspective, that's where my lens is coming from. All right. So one of the things that I had to do once I realized, shoot, I'm doing all this, it doesn't make me happy. So why do I keep doing it? Why do I feel responsible for this? I had to actually ask myself this. And once I realized this, to try to break that cycle for myself and no one else. And once you started breaking it, because when you used to play a role, a certain role, people see you through this lens. It's not gonna be easy for you not only to decide that for yourself, but once people realize that you've decided that this isn't the role that I play, that's all. It's two things. Once you overcome it, or once you go through that work, people are gonna have to go through it dealing with the new version of you. So that's also hard. This is why I think a lot of people are struggling, particularly people who've dealt with trauma, because I'm one of these people, right? And again, trauma is relative to who you are. It affects everybody differently. And I personally, because of the stuff that I've experienced, I've managed to look at how my trauma has been an experience, right? How I mix my experiences, again, labels. It's also something else. But the experiences that I've had for as long as I can remember, the more I process them, right? Whether it's the crying, whether it's facing them directly with the individuals, but more importantly for yourself, once you realize that, and then you understand it, but you see, to be able to become aware that there's a lesson. I always felt like whatever that I was experiencing as a child, whether it was parentification or expectations or not being able to use my voice when I needed to, like all these things we're actually part of something. I just didn't know how to put it all together. But the more I went out in the communities and mentoring children, and I realized there was a pattern, right? There was a pattern in terms of behaviors that cause these things to happen. And it starts with in childhood, whether it's the lack of parenting, whether it's the lack of emotional support. It all stems from very early on, which builds up, right? So one of the things that I've been able to do that I can also help you do as you go through this program is whether you, again, we're focusing on youth and parents with younger kids, and then young women in particular, before they become parents, is truly take time for yourself, really examining yourself, the environment that you're a part of. Have you ever asked yourself, is this healthy? Or have you ever seen anything like it? And it's hard if you've never been exposed to any new environment. So the first step is taking the step back to actually watch your environment, watch how your role in that environment, and more importantly, start exposing yourself, whether it's visiting a new place, learning how families, healthy or unhealthy, whatever that is. Like, I started to get really curious. So it's making the decision to actually take the first step, right? And the second thing is, how you do that is really, some people can do it, whether it's going to a library, reading a book about families. Like, I read a lot of books on marriages, relationships, people's behaviors, and starting with the public health. Actually, I got that degree when I was a consultant, working for a health human services client, when I discovered how health particularly affects a particular group in the U.S., minority groups in America and around the world. So that actually opened the whole window for me, and then it just went on from there. But before that, I started doing a lot of research about sexual abuse, because that's something that I experienced and I really wanted to understand. And then I learned about trafficking and so forth. And then it goes back to, again, the environment, the woman's ability to, or equipped enough to be able to bring life. And it's not just the woman, but the guy too. But the majority of the work sadly falls on the women for the most part of the world. So that's the first thing, taking a step back and truly watch your environment, and then what role do you play. And if you are unable to do that, there are books rather than, and I'm not saying don't go to a therapist and all that stuff, but there are a lot of books out there, and thank God for technology. And I'm so grateful I have a background exposed really early on. I've been exposed to technology and continue to appreciate it. But there's a lot online that you can do. But it started by asking questions. So that's where it started for me. And I think I can really help a lot of folks do that. And I've also been able to help other people in my network, right, see that. And I can definitely, I'm proud that I've been able to do that. Whether it's folks that just come across, I just pour it in and I give them my 2 cents. But I've been blessed to be able to say, hey, I've been able to work with some friends to be able to let them see certain things. And again, I always gonna see things through your lenses, so it's important to have a network of support. So part of this program is, during the application process, I asked you, are you aware, or do you have at least 3 to 4 people in your network that you can, or 3 to 5 people in your network that you can actually rely on if you need to, because that's essential. I think anything that you're tackling, I don't care if it's poverty, I don't care if it's self-worth, I don't care if it's your truth, there's going to come a point where you're going to need a support network. And I'm not saying don't go through it yourself. There's power in that too. When I say yourself, you're never by yourself, right? But there are some things I think you need to be able to go through by not going to an expert, because there are, up to a certain point, because there are lessons that you need to learn that sometimes someone's opinion, right, expert opinion, can deter you, right? So I think you can it's good to get to a point where you absolutely say, okay, I've had enough now, I don't know, and then turn to someone else. And that's hard. That's hard work. So as part of that support that I provide, the other thing that I believe I can help you do with this program and the network of people that I have that I can bring into this table too. It's not just me. I have a network of support, whether they're coaches, mentors, at different levels. So I'm super blessed for that. But my key strength is my ability to sense, right? And do it honestly. I've been able to do that for myself, and I've been able to do that with those who have benefited, whether it's through my network and those I've helped personally. So that's another one. I would say earn your experiences, right? When I don't say lead them, I said earn them, because too often when we think of our experiences, we're so ashamed of them, right? I come from a culture where people are so ashamed of, oh, this happened in the family, we shouldn't talk about it, and then before you know it, it's repeated again. So yeah, for the first 20 years of my life, right, there's some things I experienced and continue to experience in life that shaped me to be who I am. So if I'm ashamed of these experiences or reject these experiences, it's like rejecting a part of myself. So it's embracing all these parts and say, okay, out of all these things, what is the lesson here? And that's one thing I've been able to do, and I can help you do as well. And it's hard because some people don't want to talk about things. And I see this with my own family. So my parents, for example, I would ask certain questions when they were growing up. How was life like? They don't want to talk about it. And what does that tell you? So when you reject certain experiences or certain things, or a family member that's part of your life that does something, you can't reject that, right? Because you're already part of it. So what you can do is look at it from an eye of non-judgment, right? I guess look at it from the reality of it, and then decide, okay, what's the lesson here, right? And that's what I've been able to do for my own life, right? And of course, there's so many areas of it. So there isn't one particular area, but I think for me, my ability to say, this is the environment that I come from, I want to understand it more. So I started with myself, the world, communities. So I want to understand communities. I want to understand people, because I truly believe a lot of what's inside of us, whether it's the food we eat, whether it's the way we dress, you name it, the language, all that stuff play a role in terms of our experiences and what we choose to make who we are. In reality, we are none of those things. So the ability to be flexible and adaptable, and to be able to say, okay, well, this isn't for me. But instead of saying, well, this was part of the generational thing, we can't let it go, then that becomes a problem, because then you seeing that so many kids are going through certain hardships, but communities are no longer available to take care of all these children, because life is just different. Now our parents have to travel so far to get opportunities, or our siblings. So therefore, when you're in a community where it's the majority of the women, the men have to travel far away versus going to the farming, which is right down the road, it's different. So how do we make sure we adopt from these generational beliefs, way of life, to make sure that these experiences now perhaps were part of us? There are lessons to be learned, but we have to realize that we're living in new reality. Believe me, I'm still doing that too. So that's something that I've been able to do and can certainly help you do. And I would say managing yourself is not easy. So this is why I'm realizing one of the hardest things that women have to deal with, especially those who have kids, is the ability to manage their lives and then the household or their children. And it's a lot. So if you were not trained, all right, to know how to manage your life, I don't mean having food, going to work, and no, I mean really like manage your your emotional, spiritual, your time, like literally feeling at peace with yourself every day as much as you can. It's gonna be hard to do it 24 hours a day, but if you can maintain it 75 to 90% of the time, that's great, because every day we get up, it's a unique experience. But so many people are not able to do that because from a childhood perspective, that's not something that was provided. The first thing that you learn from a child is, as a child, it's just going with the program, right? Watching people behaving a certain way. But no one ever sits you down and actually say, hey, the first 10 years of your life, your ability to manage and love yourself are priority and everything else is not. No. In my case, what happened is the opposite. Trained to take care, and then that became the go-to, right? And then when you realize that, hey, those people, that environment that you come from, it no longer exists, then you're gonna feel lost, because that's what you're worth. That's what you're. Even though you had, you have a life, you have a home, you have your own life, right? Whether you have children, whether you're married, that part of your life, it carries on, and you see it. I'm blessed to have so many friends in my life, and people in my network who have kids, where you see these people, their inability to manage themselves, and it's affecting their children, it's affecting their lives, and they don't know how to really do it. So essentially, if you can have kids, right? If you can have kids, you're providing for them, like in my case, why not try to have a conversation with my mother, for example, about struggles as a child. And she said, well, what struggle did you have as a child? You had a house to live, you had food to eat, and all you had to do is help around the house. So in her experience growing up, this was more than she could have asked for, because she grew up living with different people. So, and then my grandmother was an orphan, and then my father as well, who also left his parents' home when he was 8, living with siblings. So you can see that dynamic, right? To them, what we have today is way more than they could have expected, right? From a material perspective. But emotionally, they never had that sense of security. Spiritually, it's also was different. So there's all these pieces that's part of us, and they don't know how to provide all that. So it's our responsibility up to a certain age to be able to do those things. And for some of us, we may never get there because of whatever the situation is. So once you have children, that cycle continues. So what people are calling poverty, in my opinion, are just cycles of challenges that continues to go on, which becomes part of the belief system or generational challenges that we are dealing with. This is why one of our key vision is to really allow communities the resources to continuously learn and evolve, so they can be better equipped for every generation. That's part of our that's our vision, actually. And our mission, we do that through partnerships, by really, because we truly believe that, I truly believe that everyone has that creativity in them, or that unique thing that they bring to the table. Finding it, though, is a challenge, especially when you've been when you've been in an environment where you never had to look at yourself, or you've never been seen. When I say seen, whether it's speaking your truth, or your emotions, or somebody caring or holding your hand and saying you'll be okay. Like when you had to do that for everybody else, right? Or you've been taught that that's what your worth is through making everybody happy. What do we expect society to look like, right? So I can help you do all those things, not from a psychological perspective, but specifically from a personal experience, and as well as my work in the community, which you'll see through our report that I've been able to do going to the communities, learning, and of course my own network and family too have done this, but in particular, partnering with different organizations, working in communities, particularly the Boys and Girls Clubs and so many others, and to see what happens when we take these kids out of that environment when they've never done that, in the way that they think, the way that they understand things. So for this particular program, the Lead and Earn program, once we help you or give you the coaching that we believe that you need, we also want you to earn that worth, whether it's an entrepreneurial idea or it's your project. Once you are successful and you would like to share that experience, whether it's through your entrepreneurial endeavor or your whatever it is, we like to be able to bring that unique group of people together on a yearly basis and support you from not just the skilled mentors or the coaching, but from a financial perspective, give you this platform to help you raise the fund to allow you to travel to a new environment. And so we have between the Caribbean, US, we know US how hard it is for others to come here, but especially those in the US, to be able to take them to these other places where they can mentor and see and be part of that community, and vice versa, whether it's those in the Caribbean taking them to Africa, or those in Africa taking them to the Caribbean or other parts of the world, whether it's Asia or Europe, to be able to experience a new environment. Because too often, in a lot of the issues that you're seeing today, I think if people were more exposed, right, more free, I don't mean more free in terms of, I think that's relative, but if people have the ability as early as possible to be exposed to as many cultures or a new environment, and you don't have to go far, right? It's a matter of traveling from, if you've been living in California all your life, hey, go to Tennessee for a while or Mississippi for a while. I mean, go visit, right? And I think that's something I've been able to do. My curiosity have helped me overcome a lot of, or understand things in my life differently. And that's not to say I'm not working on myself. I think the beauty is for me to keep applying these and to keep learning as I share what I know. And this is how I can help you do this through this program, particularly when it comes to making sure you have the right support network, you have the platform to be able to raise the fund for your entrepreneurial idea if you're successful, and you don't have to always have sorry about that, that's my phone alarm. You don't always have to have an entrepreneurial idea, but through your project, how can we support you expand yourself so you become more aware? The aware piece, I think, is the biggest piece here, because that's the work that you have to go through. You have to really be honest with yourself and say, hey, I can do this work and I'm ready to do this work. And through this work, you'll find beauty. With that said, I think I'm going to stop this video right now. I hope this was helpful to understand how I, Lexima Jeanose, can help you bring, or at least find, understand, right? Because I think it's up to you to really find what it is that you're seeking for. But I think the support network, which I feel like a lot of people don't have, particularly young women before they become parents, this is why we are working to change that. This is why we're looking for women in particular to change that. And I hope you continue to be part of this and join forces, speak up, and bring our voices for change as a group, as a collective. All right. With that said, thank you for listening. Until then, make the best of your day. And don't forget, subscribe to this channel and download the Lead and Earn program. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. And I look forward to meeting you virtually, hopefully. Cheers. Have a wonderful one. Cheers.